There is more to inner-city public transport systems than being the means from point A to point B. Parts of such systems effectively function as urban landmarks. And if a particular system were adequately appropriated, the system would have an added value, beyond the utilitarian aspect of inner-city transport systems. It's the image of the place that reaps the benefits. This short film argues in favor of a specific order. Technology in inner-city public transport is second principle. Technology should be seen as the description of a tailored or customized system, whereas first principle is ought to be the resulting urban image. To have it in the opposite order is to give more emphasis on utilitarian aspect of public transport systems and to suppress their urban input. This next segment documents an extreme case of a failed system, though the conditions for such failure is unlikely not to be predicted in advance. Nonetheless, it's a good example for what happens when utility argued by entrepreneurial technology dominates a process of this kind.
Skyscrapers are traditional landmarks of New York, but there are other landmarks like the grimy ribbon of steel now being dismantled that decorates Manhattan's East Side. Officially, it was the 3rd Avenue Elevated Railroad, but New Yorkers just called it the L. For 76 years, L trains clattered by, carrying people to work and home again. But the old steel skeleton outlived its usefulness. Passengers dwindled, and so the L is being torn down. Above Chinatown, Manhattan's last L dappled the street with shadows. The cars themselves were 50 years old, and almost everybody agreed 3rd Avenue would be better without the L that nearly touched the buildings, obstructed traffic, and blotted out the sun. A ride once cost a nickel. Before electricity came, tiny steam engines hauled the cars, showering red-hot coals on the pedestrians, belching smoke on the housewives' wash. Well, things change, and the L is at the end of the line. This is the last of the 3rd Avenue L, filmed just before its trains rumbled into history. Bound for the scrap heap, the L belongs to the past. In the mountains of brick and steel, it soon will be forgotten amid America's changing scene.
In the case of hanging tram of Wuppertal, participation was the reason for bringing about a one-of-kind system. The story started when Harcourt, a local entrepreneur and politician, saw an opportunity in a railway system designed by Palmer of England. The system was a low single-rail suspension railway on which the carriages were drawn by horses. Harcourt surveyed the route and constructed one segment. The original route layout failed to gain public support because it didn't connect a number of industrial sites in the area. The alternative route came to make use of the layout of River Wupper, by which most industrial sites are physically connected. The site conditions surrounding the new route necessitated the use of elevated railway system designed by Langon of Cologne. Utility argued by public opinion, not by statesmen and entrepreneurs, what prompted the image of Wuppertal today. And because it was always in the interest of everyone that the hanging tram of Wuppertal continues to exist, the system has managed to sustain 100 years of operation. As it stands, the resources needed to keep it up to date were always available. The result is an image of city defined by the dialogue taking place between the suspended railway, its physical context, and the lives of residents as well as visitors. Furthermore, the hanging tram of Wuppertal is not a mere add-on to the city, it is fully integrated and fully functional urban spine. If this proves anything, participation is the way to go in deciding on public transport system and layout. In Wuppertal, the process was driven by the collective power of statesmen, entrepreneur and public opinion. The outcome would have to be a customized system where technology is appropriated to fit a particular context.
An dieser Stelle ist das Gerüst noch gebaut.
Qataris today are also at a decisive moment. It is as such because the decisions taken will set the mode for what comes after. At the outset, the task at hand is to deliver a public transport system that would live up to 2022 commitment. To a certain extent, this utilitarian perspective is what prompted the idea of going for a subway metro system. This particular technology seems to be handy and fit to purpose. It is an efficient system, which can be installed without anybody taking notice. This is because it won't disturb the existing urban fabric. But a utilitarian perspective would also mean that urban input is being suppressed in the process. What should be at center stage in this decisive is the concern that has been around ever since Qatar sought hosting the 2022. Normally host centuries utilize existing facilities and infrastructure. But in this case it was clear that everything has to be built from scratch. And with this rose the concern, what happens when the tournament is over? Organizers should be living day in and day out the nightmare of having a public opinion that regards 2020 as an extravagant and expansive hobby. Going for a subway network will only complicate things. Because after all the painstakingly process of building the network, it will be of no purpose beyond 2022. On one hand it will be connecting venues built for the 2022 tournament, and on the other connecting routes will be bearing no relation to existing structures and networks. The input that this transport system needs to have is to weave the various sports venues into the existing urban fabric. Weaving means reclaiming the urban sites located in between. This includes structures, businesses, services and most importantly communities. This can only be achieved when going for on-ground systems and not under. A network of this type would have to negotiate its way through public interest. And it is the process that will render 2022 a beginning and not an end. And at this stage technology comes to save the day. Monorail system is capable of achieving multiple objectives in one go. Efficient, physically weaves the developed sites and has minimum disruption to existing urban fabric. A monorail system will expand the urban experience. It will redefine the act of urban mobility. Public transport becomes more than just getting from point A to point B. It's about seeing and being seen. In one sentence, monorail encapsulates the essence of urban life. Furthermore, information technology made it possible to manage a participatory development process that is most required here. Who decides on the route layout, who owns the railway and who owns and operates the trams? Managing all previous components through a centralized process instead of participatory one will only lead to an unsustainable development. As of that, it is no longer accurate to describe the undertaking as project. The technical term is urban intervention. It's a process involving agencies and entities with competing short-term objectives and incompatible operational modes. Bluestone regards itself capable of playing a supervisory administrative role, first, designing the participatory process required by a large-scale urban intervention of this type. This process should identify 1. Intervention components. 2. Division of labor. 3. decision-making and for its interface. Second, Bluestone has also been committed to playing a role in monitoring and coordinating the approved version of its proposal.